All right, everyone. Welcome back to season 2 of the SAPIEN podcast. We had a great season 1 with Dr. Gary, my host here. We're back for another round. We had some great guests, a lot of in-person guests. We're trying to make it more of a community podcast, and that's what we're going to do with season 2. And this episode, we're going to give a lot of actionable advice and talk about the SAPIEN diet and framework for new listeners. And, it's changed even. It's always changing. That's the whole point. So even since last year, we've gotten more info on, all these good diet and lifestyle practices, and we're going to be sharing them with the audience. So here's Dr. Gary.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all the support we got last season, and we are so excited to do this. I am so happy to be here with Brian, and like he said, we are constantly evolving. We're constantly changing. The SAPIEN diet and lifestyle has been a life-changing experience for myself, for my clinical practice. For those of you that don't know, I have a practice called Evolve Healthcare in Woodland Hills, California, and we've been teaching people how to live a better life for the last few years. So many of my patients have come back to me and told me how inspired and sort of motivated they were by listening to us and our guests. So I really am excited to be here in our new studios, and we have some great guests lined up. Mm-hmm. And let's get into it today. I want everyone to know we're gonna kind of reframe and reintroduce what the SAPIEN diet and lifestyle is.
Mm-hmm. SAPIEN.
Let's just dive in. So, SAPIEN diet and lifestyle. Notice we're always saying "and lifestyle." We really struggled with this concept of diet. The word diet.
It's not a good word. There's no good word for way of eating. This is what I eat to get sustenance and live well. And then there's a lifestyle part. It's completely different as well, right?
It's multifactorial, the lifestyle part. But an analogy we use a lot, and I love it, is we are trying to teach people how to fish. We are not trying to give people fish.
Yeah.
It's so important to think about, because that's really where the lifestyle component comes in. It's like, I'm trying to encourage everyone to learn about food, learn about nutrition, not just how to do it right, but the history of it, so we understand how we even got into the mess that we're in today.
Or why you're doing it. The why is the most important part. So people just hear about keto, they heard it on the news, and they Google it, and you just eat fat. And then they don't know why they're doing it, and they don't stick to it. Or they don't know why they're doing it, and then they do it wrong because you don't know why.
And then there's fear-mongering about it's dangerous. And this is probably even more true with intermittent fasting, which we will talk about how it is probably the most powerful intervention I've ever learned to teach anyone. I've ever adopted myself. And there's so much confusion about it, and people come to me all the time. Hey, I've been trying intermittent fasting. It doesn't work. I'm hungry. I have headaches, this and that. And it's like, it's not a fad. What we're talking about is not a fad idea. It's simple, but it's a nuanced concept about how you should look at food, how you should think about the food relating to you. We'll talk a lot about hormones. I think maybe, the first thing you should think about is we're not going to talk about calories. We're not going to talk about portion control. We're going to talk about how food and how frequency and quality of food affects your hormones, because it's the hormones that drive your mood, that drive your weight gain or weight loss, your muscle gain or muscle loss, how you sleep. I mean, it's the way your body's systems communicate with each other, and people will often come up to me and sort of, will you check my testosterone? I must have low testosterone. And it's like, no, yes, I can check it, but hormones are a complicated system that includes your sex hormones, that includes your thyroid hormone, your adrenal hormones, there's an endocannabinoid system that, we might get into in a future episode that's really, really powerful and underappreciated and not well understood. So, all of these hormone systems, vitamin D is a hormone, pro-hormone anyway. So, as we go through this, I want everyone to really think about, how does food make me feel, and realize that feeling is coming from a hormonal change.
Well, food matters so much. People don't think about how food affects them. So that's kind of what you're saying, is it's how you feel. So people they eat something and then they feel tired, and then they just think, oh, I'm just tired, or, oh, this is just what happens to me every day at 2 p.m. I'm just tired. They don't connect it. So we're just disconnected from how food affects us. And back in the day, we always get back to ancestral nutrition. I always say this, humans were the same. We had the same brain for about 300,000 years.
Hundreds of thousands
We
of
were
years.
very smart back
Yeah.
then. We didn't have an iPhone and we didn't have rocket ships, but we were just as smart. So we were very intelligent about our surroundings, about our bodies, about our food, about the environment, about hunting. And so we figured this stuff out. And a lot of this stuff we're going to talk about this season is just going back to the way we used to be. But there's a way to do it in a modern way. We're not saying, you have to live in a cave and just throw out all modern conveniences and technology. So,
And to add to that, like there's different words that are used, buzzwords that are used to describe sort of what we're doing. So you can say ancestral health. You could say biohacking, right? Because we have to hack our way to a healthy lifestyle in this weird modern world we have. I always pose it as we are looking to our past to have a better future, because I think that we have gotten so married to research studies and we have gotten so married to concepts that are really just maybe 100 years old. The way of life that we have is a result of agriculture, which is maybe 10,000 years old. But we as a species have been dominant on this planet and lived in sync with the planet, not destroying the planet for hundreds of thousands of years. And so we try to look back on history. We try to reinterpret it through a modern lens. We try to take the research that we have today, which there's a lot of good research, but it's a lot of research. It's all very confusing. And we try to integrate it for people and come up with concepts that are simple, that are easy to follow, and that are adaptable to many people.
and enjoyable.
And I think this is where we do stand apart from other people in the low carb space. I want everyone to get this. I want everyone to be able to take the SAPIEN diet and lifestyle, put their spin on it, adapt it to their life, and find success. And that is the goal. It is not to be ideological. It is to be as inclusive as possible.
I love that. And before we dive into the real details, we should just say who you are exactly. If people don't know, Dr. Gary, he's at Evolve Healthcare. He's my friend since college, went to UCLA together. He's an amazing doctor. So what happened is a lot of people go through medical training and then wake up to the fact that maybe it wasn't all correct, that we had some bad ideas, they didn't get taught nutrition stuff, and focus more on this fundamental what do we call it? Like root cause medicine?
Root cause medicine,
functional. I mean, there's all these
integrative medicine. There's a lot of buzzwords.
But anyway, so Dr. Gary is an amazing doctor. So we partnered up to create the company SAPIEN together, and I guess he can tell you more about what he
Brian.
does.
So yeah, at the heart of it, I'm an osteopathic physician. I was trained as a DO. I went on to do an allopathic residency, meaning a residency supported by like the traditional MD training programs. And I went and became an internal medicine physician. I specialize in essentially chronic diseases. I was trained to be a hospitalist at the core, and I've since sort of expanded my practice to the outpatient clinical setting. And yeah, as Brian said, after my training, I did like 15 years of training. I the entire time was pretty frustrated with various components of it, which you guys will hear about. And sort of on a trip, me and Brian were on a trip together, and Brian's a really smart guy. This is an engineer. He's created multiple businesses. He's a self-starter. This is one of the most brilliant and motivated guys I've ever met. And I listen when he talks. So to make a long story short, we got into it about nutrition. I had finished my training. I felt like I knew what I was talking about, even though I only had like 4 hours of training in nutrition throughout the whole thing. And that, call it argument, led to my journey to learn more about food, learn about nutrition. Really what inspired me was learning about the history of food and nutrition in America and how we got to the recommendations that I was taught. And, that was like 4 or 5 years ago. And now, we've developed this program together. The that's a lot about me. I want to talk about Brian a bit. This guy is a real inspiration. And if you haven't listened to the Peak Human podcast, everyone must listen to it. It is one of the, it is a education in nutrition unlike any other. He has the leading researchers and scientists around the world. He just hit 100 episodes. And when you're listening to this, he's probably well past those 100 episodes. And me personally, I've learned so much from you and your guests. And I know that's really the heart of this community. Sapien community started with the Peak Human podcast. And his motivation has led him to make a movie. And you guys have all heard about Food Lies, and we're really excited for that. You want to say something?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, I hope people have heard about Food Lies. It's not out yet, but I guess that's what I do my social media under, and that's how I got started in this. Yeah, Peak Human, that's more of our scientific podcast. I have world-leading experts on nutrition, health, doctors, regenerative agriculture, anything that touches the food space. So definitely check that out. But yeah, my brief history is, as a mechanical engineer. I was just a regular guy eating whatever the hell I wanted and just, thought I was doing fine. And then I realized I wasn't. And you hit 30 and you kind of you can't eat whatever you want. And, luckily I was doing better than other people though. When other people hit 30, everyone's like, oh, it's a dad bod, like that's fine. That's how everyone is. And I was like the in shape guy. And I was back there wearing like a 32-inch waist. I had poor body composition. I made some simple changes. Now I wear a size 28 waist. And
now you're just showing off, Brian.
So that's my story. So I changed, but I always put in this part too, is by my parents, right? Like,
this is an important part of the.
I lost my parents at 30. So this was the same time. I mean, chronic diseases that shouldn't have taken them. And so that woke me up. And that's when I started my journey 7 years ago. And I got really into this whole, sort of ancestral eating world. And I don't even like calling it low carb. I mean, it's just the ancestral eating world. It's just, it implies whole foods and how humans should eat. It doesn't imply, low carb. It just happens to be.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Look, there's a lot of buzzwords that we're throwing them all out there. And I promise everyone who's listening in the next few minutes, we are going to describe in detail what we're talking about. But suffice to say, this is something that has changed my life as well, Brian's life. I could talk about my parents. Both of them have dealt with many issues throughout their life. Once they understood what we were up to, they adapted and their whole life changed. I've now since had hundreds and hundreds of patients, maybe thousands, I haven't really counted, but patients whose lives are dramatically changed by these simple interventions. And man, I'm just excited to talk. Let's get into it. Brian Sanders, what is the SAPIEN diet and lifestyle?
All right. Well, I say it's a SAPIEN framework, right? It's not a single diet. It's a way of living. And what it is living how a human should. So it's like we keep saying, it's going back to our roots. This is when we were healthy. People who are anti-meat, they like to try to bring up that we were unhealthy or we would live short lives. And all this will be debunked in the Food Lies film. Yeah. But the high level thing is we did not have chronic diseases. We lived long and dropped dead. We see a lot of these people who still live the way we used to. They're in their 90s. They're carrying bags up hills. They're fine. They're strong people without disease. So how do we live like that?
There is this concept that we were unhealthy. And now there's this concept that as you get into your 60s and 70s, you have these chronic diseases and that is what happens. No, we have not evolved to get progressively sicker as the decades go on. That is not true. We have evolved to thrive and then drop dead, like you just said. Mm-hmm. And that is the crux of it. I want people to expect themselves to dominate every day, to feel great every day. And if you're not, figure it out. Tweak your lifestyle. This is so important.
Well, no, it's possible. The bar is set so low. Our expectations are so low because it's just around us. So there's another thing. It's just because it's normal doesn't mean it's right. Just because it's typical, doesn't mean it's normal, right? It's typical for people to be on 6 medications and carry 30 extra pounds. That doesn't mean it's normal for a human. So, okay, we've danced around long enough. The SAPIEN,
We like to break things down into their simplest components. What are our 4 principles of at least the nutritional component of this lifestyle?
nutrition side. It's number 1, whole foods. That's the basic of everything. It all revolves around whole foods. Number 2 is focus on protein and micronutrients. These are your building blocks. Number 3 is embrace fat, minimize carbs. These are your fuel sources. And number 4 is don't eat all the time. And you know, people call it time-restricted feeding. They call it condensed eating window, call it intermittent fasting. That's the basics. And now we can jump into each one. So whole foods.
Those 4, by the way, seem simple. They're intertwined in concepts like paleo, concepts like keto, and what no one does is integrate them into a unified theory of nutrition. And that's what Brian Sanders has brought to the table here. Let's get started with these 4 principles because there's so much to talk about. Number 1, whole foods. If you buy a box of food or grab something from the grocery store and there's 40 ingredients and you cannot pronounce half of them, that is not a whole food. And it's frankly bad for you.
Well, it shouldn't have any ingredients.
I mean,
That's ideal.
ideal. I'm just saying, if you open, let's use, this is maybe a bad example, but I like it. If you get a bag of potato chips and there's like 30 chemicals, that's chemical slop. But you could certainly find a bag of organic chips cooked in avocado oil with salt, with sea salt. Those are all whole foods.
3 ingredients, yeah. Just
3 ingredients.
Yeah.
You know exactly what they are. So on some level, it's not even just about low carb. It's about thinking about real food, like real food products. And when we talk about things like, dairy, for example, if you're going to eat dairy, we want it to be raw. We want it to be grass-fed. We want the cow to be raised well and fed real food. That's true about eggs. I want the highest quality eggs. So I guess I'm talking about food quality a bit, not just the whole food component. But to me, that's one concept is we have to have the highest quality whole food to give you the highest quality nutrition.
So I always think that it sounds a little bit cliche or just old news or just simple or just, I don't even know. People are like, oh, okay, whatever, eat whole foods. I get it. But it's more than that. I've been down this journey for 7 years and making the film for 3 years and talking to the world's top researchers, looking into all different diets. And you can't just blow it off as some like little thing. You have to understand that the level of processing, the further away you get from the whole food, the worse it is. And you can have, 10% of your diet be a bit processed. That's fine. It's not going to kill you. It's like, yes, you can have some chips once in a while if you find the right chips. But it really does matter. Like it's this old message that people don't even want to hear because we're obsessed with processed foods, but it's foundational.
And it's also like people do hear don't eat processed foods. Well, what's the opposite of processed foods? It's real whole foods. And there's organizations that promote whole foods like the Weston A. Price Foundation and some others.
Whole 30.
Whole 30, I love it. What about whole grains, Brian?
Well, that's just funny. We'll get into it in the film, and I don't consider that a real whole food. That is a modern food that we've created, and we've modified grains that were wild, and we've turned them into a whole new thing. And we don't eat them in the correct way, even. And we're gonna have a great guy, Dr. Bill Schindler. He's the man. He will cover all of this stuff. But the high level thing is these whole grains are not healthy for you. You maybe can do okay with them if you get the right ones, the organic ones that are maybe from Europe even that aren't the same ones we have here, the ancient grains, and then you have to soak them.
Well, this is fermentation.
You have to soak and ferment them. It's a long process that no one's doing. Yeah.
It's out there, but it's very niche, and it's not thought of as like this is how you should eat bread. Is it should be fermented grains. So again, there's so much subtlety and nuance to what we're talking about. So it's not like we're anti all grains, but this concept of like whole grains is just good for you. No, like that's nonsense. Well, it's more complicated than that.
Yeah, anything you could just get at a normal store that says whole grains, it's not what you need.
It's not whole food like what we're talking about. Yeah. You have to process food in the appropriate ways, not chemically.
There's two kinds of processing.
Please.
So Bill Schindler, again, he'll say all throughout history, food processing increased nutrient density. In all of modern times, food processing decreases nutrient density. It makes it worse. The only things we do in modern times that people are kind of aware of is, I guess, fermented like pickles and sauerkraut and stuff like that. But other than that, we're not really processing anything correctly.
Especially in our culture, in our country. Other countries are a little bit more open to that. I'm, for example, from Russia. I came here when I was 3, and I grew up eating a lot of fermented foods. And they were some of my favorite foods. And I never realized how good they were for me until, last few years.
You had a whole different thing. You were eating liver and os tail foods and all that.
I mean, when you go back, not even thousands of years, but if you just go back like 100 years, people, even in America, liver and onions was considered an important food. Cod liver oil was a food supplement we gave our children. We knew instinctually and from our history how to eat, and it's just devolved into a mess.
Well, it's only 70 years ago, like 1950s, 1960s, we were doing, liver and onions. You're eating whole foods. People were making all their meals. Now, I mean, even just the eating out culture is insane. We're eating away from home like way more. I don't remember the statistics, but it's completely changed. So we should get on to the next.
I was going to say, we got it, whole food. But number 2 is very, very important. It's this idea of focus on protein and nutrients. Focus on protein and nutrients. We want you to center your meals around healthy proteins. We want to make sure you're consuming healthy salts. You're getting all of your minerals. You're getting all of your vitamins. And you don't do that by fixating on fat or fixating on carb restriction. You do it by focusing on healthy protein.
Nutrient-dense whole foods, and that's animal foods. And the quick story, Weston Price, I love talking about him because he kind of just figured it out. I think it's a great illustration of it that we've proved with modern science. We proved it out, but he went around the world, all these disparate countries and peoples and native living populations, and they all did the same thing. Their diets revolved around these nutrient-dense whole foods, especially around pregnancy. And it's the animal foods, it's eggs, it's butter, it's the fat and the protein that comes from animals. It's nose to tail nutrition, it's organs, it's seafood. And they knew this was healthy for them, and now we've proved it out. So,
For those of you that don't know, Weston A. Price was a dentist in the early 1900s that used his observations on tooth decay to make extrapolations about food. He traveled around the world and observed cultures that have not adapted Western diets, and then those that have adapted Western-style diets, which includes lots of flour, sugar, and grains.
Seed oils.
Seed oils, thank you. And the people that adapt the Western diet received worse dental decay, worse metabolic disease. They just became less healthy.
Immediately. And so it's another good pitch for Whole Foods. It's as soon as the processed foods come in, their health was ruined. So nutrient-dense Whole Foods is where you get the bioavailable nutrition. If you want to, we've got to quickly cover all these things, is that animal foods are a better sort of and complete source of protein and minerals and nutrients, and that plant foods have them, but our bodies can't access them as well.
So a SAPIEN diet at its heart is an animal-based diet. It is animal-based nutrition. Many folks that work with me are carnivore-ish, if you want to use that term. But this idea that you can eat a majority of your food in plant form and thrive is, to me, very, very misleading to people, and it puts people down an unhealthy path ultimately. So while that's tough for a lot of people to hear, and some people are like kind of off-put when I say that, I'm okay with it, because the reality is you need to eat animal foods. And for those that are resistant to it, you have to commit your whole life to making sure you're getting all these nutrients and proteins. You have to eat chemicals, you have to supplement, you're dependent on the supplementation. And I think that is a bad strategy to promote to the general public, because it's very, very challenging to be successful if you can at all long term. That's I guess to be debated. I suppose if you're really aggressively supplementing and committed to it, you can survive on a vegan diet. But suffice to say, we recommend an animal-based diet, and we want you to source your animal products as best you can. And
well, yeah. So it's a really, like you said, tough pill to swallow. It's everything in the mainstream, all the mainstream dietary advice, all these organizations are wrong. They're wrong, and I could tell you why. There's a whole history to that, and there's a lot of money involved, and there's mistakes involved. It's not like they're evil. It's like we made some mistakes. It all happened. We got this momentum. These big food companies were created, and now we have to walk it back and figure it out. But if people just this is our first episode, I want to we can't cover everything, but I have many episodes of Peak Human talking to top scientists about each individual issue. So if you're listening now, it's like, oh, what about saturated fat? What about cholesterol? What about this? Well, I heard it causes cancer. We will go into all that in this season, or we can point you to episodes of Peak Human with world-leading experts on that topic.
So we've covered whole foods. We've covered protein and nutrients being the focus. Now let's talk about energy sources, and this is really, really important. We want people to embrace fat and minimize carbs. And why that is because those are your energy sources. Protein does not turn out to be an effective energy source. It is the building blocks of your muscles, of all the systems in your body. You need the nutrients, but you need energy. Which is to say, you have to burn either carbohydrates or fat to create ultimately ATPs and energy in your body. When you are eating a standard American diet, when you're eating carbohydrates all the time regularly, you are dependent on these carbohydrates for your energy source. This creates ultimately a metabolic problem and a hormonal changes that will lead to all sorts of problems, i.e. diabetes, etc., obesity, obviously. When you burn fat, you are thought to be in ketosis, which is the ultimate fuel that the fats break down into. That fuel increases your metabolic function, and there's a number of studies that suggest that. It is a better fuel source for your brain, and it puts you in a healthier metabolic state.
Yeah, so there's two forms. People think that your body needs glucose to survive. Your body will always produce glucose, and it can break down fats, and you always have it. You can produce in your liver. So
a process called gluconeogenesis in your liver.
Yes. So that's not a problem, for one. Carbohydrates are non-essential. This is well known in all textbooks. It's non-essential. And I guess to go back to the ancestral point of view, we needed to run on fat because we didn't always have food. So glucose, carbohydrates, is this quick form of energy. And if in a modern world, it's always easy to get carbs, so people just like to use that. And it feels good because you get a sugar rush and you get energy. But you don't need that, and you can run off of fat instead. So we're not saying you have to be in ketosis all the time, but you want to be fat adapted. So you want to be able to burn fat, right? Most people are just carb adapted. They're always reliant on new carb sources, so their energy crashes if they don't get a new source of carbohydrate. But people who are fat burners can go all day without eating if they need to. So for me, I used to be that guy. If my stomach would eat itself if I didn't get food for 5 or 6 hours, I was going. It hurt. It was actual pain. And now I could fast for 24 hours, easy.
Everything Brian just talked about is driven by changes in your hormones. So when you're eating carbs, like when you have your breakfast with carbs, your insulin spikes. This insulin later crashes and you become hungry. You have changes in other hormones, ghrelin, leptin, etc. As these hormones change, you have mood changes. You have changes in your energy. And you become hungry and you need more carbs. And this is the cycle most Americans are on. They're eating a carbohydrate. They're eating carbs as soon as they wake up for breakfast. 2 hours later, they need a snack. 2 hours later, it's lunch. After lunch, they're crashing and they're drinking coffee. After that, it's another snack. Then it's dinner. It's a disaster. Carbohydrates can be used as a tool for rapid energy. Athletes use them. there's a role for carbohydrates. It's not like they're just bad. It's not the point. The point is you cannot consume carbohydrates all day, every day, and expect to do well. Furthermore, the carbohydrates that we generally consume are highly processed. They spike your blood sugar dramatically compared. So let's compare like white bread to the fermented sourdough bread that we were talking about earlier. The spike in blood glucose from that processed white bread is so much more dramatic, which is then followed by an insulin spike. And to give a little bit of background on that, when you have sugar in your blood that's higher than your body wants to maintain, it is poisonous to your organs, to your nerves, and your body's a mechanism to protect itself is to pump out insulin, which drives the sugar into the cells. This creates it's like a feedback loop, and you have to keep going down this process. When you're not consuming those carbohydrates, your body, through its own auto-regulatory mechanisms, maintains a blood glucose level that is healthy and not poisonous to your cells, to your nerves, and utilizes energy from fat. For those that are trying to lose weight, that have extra energy attached to their gut, when you're burning fat from your food and you run out of that food, now you're burning fat from your gut. That's weight loss. That's healthy weight loss. That's not starving yourself where you start breaking down your muscles. So this is the kind of conceptualization about energy sources that you must try to understand in order to succeed at food.
Absolutely. And I guess we should move on just to be brief and talk about not eating all the time.
And again, probably the most important intervention of all our pillars, of all the ideas we're sharing with you, eating frequently all day, every day is a big nightmare. It screws you up, to be frank. It creates a metabolic problem.
Well, there's multiple things. You never give your body a break. I mean, it's very simple. Like, do you want to have your business open 18 hours a day, or do you want to have it open 8 hours a day? Like, which do you think is going to be more efficient? And I know it's a kind of crazy to compare that to body, but it actually does kind of work like that with the cellular repair and cleanup. If it's always having to process foods, it doesn't have time to repair itself.
Mitochondrial health comes to mind as you say that. When you are fasting, you're able to heal your body. Your mitochondria are the power blocks of your cells. The only way they can recycle, the only way they can go through a process called autophagy, where your body gets rid of old energies, old batteries, and puts new batteries in, is by fasting. It's very, very important to give your body a break. It also helps you be in a fat-burning state. It teaches your body that you're not always going to be putting food in and carbs in, and so you can start burning fat consistently, a process we call fat adaption.
And we should talk about it's either you're in the fed state or the fasted state. So in the fed state, your insulin's high and you can't burn fat. You cannot burn fat. Your insulin's high. It's stopping the flow of fats out of your adipose tissue. But if you're in the fasted state, then you can. And so most people are always in the fed state. So really, you want to have some time when your body's not in the fed state so you can burn your own body fat.
In my clinic, what I have seen with patients is once they figure out intermittent fasting, and let me add something to that intermittent fasting idea. The first thing I say is 16-8 method. Okay, I don't even call it 16-8 fasting. I say that right now our baseline is to eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. Eat all day. Wake up. And then 2 hours before bed, stop, and you're eating for like 12 hours a day, whatever your day looks like, right? 16-8 method is to say that the new baseline I suggest to everyone is eat no more than 8 hours a day. A window of time, a condensed eating window. Again, only condensed because it's relative to our current baseline, right? It's only fasting because it's relative to our current baseline of gorging yourself all day. Mm-hmm. And by making that one simple change, by minimizing the hours of the day during which you consume calories, you immediately turn your metabolism on. You immediately create an opportunity for your body to heal itself.
And you end up just eating less anyway. I mean, if we can talk about calories, I'm not afraid to talk about calories because they do matter.
Absolutely.
In a sense, but all calories aren't equal. We could do a whole podcast about that. But you tend, every time you eat, just imagine, okay, say you wanted to try to eat 2,000 calories a day. If you eat 6 times, how are you going to, every time you eat, you have this tendency to overeat. It's like, when do I stop? And then the more times you eat, I mean, I have a good study that shows the more times people eat in a day, the more calories they consume total. And it's a linear line. So just even simple stuff like that. If you're only eating twice a day, I eat twice a day. I eat very satisfying big meals, and I feel great. I'm totally fine, and I'm not hungry ever. And I eat.
But it takes a while to get adapted to that.
I guess, yeah, it does. It does.
It does. And for people, it's different. So the most important thing everyone should know is that window, it's adaptable. It doesn't have to be the same window every day. It doesn't have to be the same number of meals every day. Maybe it is for Brian. But what's important here is that the SAPIEN diet and lifestyle looks different for different people. And it looks different during different parts of the year or different parts of your life. So it's not like this blanket statement, like this is how everyone should eat all the time. 2 meals a day, mostly meat. Like, no, It's different. My SAPIEN diet looks different than Brian's. Some months we start eating together and we're like, oh my God, it looks exactly the same. And then other times it's very different. If you're training, if you're pregnant, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to put on muscle, there's different strategies you can use. But these principles remain constant. Like, these are not ideologies. These are like guiding lights. These are concepts that you can apply to your goals.
That's right. So people like with the keto diet, we'll pick on it again. You're like off the team if you have too many carbs. You're like, oh my God, I had a slice of sourdough bread. Even if it's Bill Schindler's special, fermented sourdough bread, you're off the team. You're off the keto team because we don't have a team. Part of the SAPIEN diet is just being enjoyable for life. It's like, how do I do this for life and not feel restricted and not be like the 98% of people that fail on diets, right? It's you have to have some give. And so Dr. Gary and I mean, we eat pizza. It's like, it happens. It's like, okay, we're not going to do it every day. We're going to bounce back and get back on track. But if we're out, we're with a group of friends, we have a pizza, okay, who cares? Yeah,
this isn't exactly. I think you could also pick on paleo, like, oh my God, you had some cheese,
off the team,
off the team, or carnivore. And I love carnivore as a tool and as a concept, right? And for a lot of people, it really, really is a powerful intervention. So I love carnivore. But just because you're carnivore, if you have a piece of cake at your kid's birthday, you're like, you're not, you know what I mean? Like, it can't be.
Or even avocado. It's like, oh my God, you can't had a slice of avocado. Like, what are you doing?
And fasting is the same way. People that start fasting, that come to me, they're like, oh my God, I can't eat until 1. I'm like, if you don't feel good in the morning and you're hungry, you did something wrong the day before, you're not yet fat adapted, chill out and have something healthy, right? Have something very, very low carb. So you still don't even, you don't put carbs into your, so there's a lot of adaptability, open-mindedness, and our goal is to unify a lot of these concepts, pescatarian, Whole30, like these are all concepts that fit within a greater understanding about food and nutrition. And I think that when we try to boil things down to some kind of dogma or some kind of like linear way of thinking, you don't help the most amount of people. And again, our goal is to help people feel better. Not just people that want to listen to us, but everyone. These are strategies that work for children. These are strategies that work for pregnant people. Why? Because you don't have to do all of them all the time. You could change it up. It's different for different people. Remember that.
Well, and it's just basic human physiology. It's not, we didn't label it a diet. It's like many people who are healthy are probably already doing a SAPIEN diet without knowing it. Exactly. And it's not like we invented this. All we're doing is letting people know, oh, you're doing, a Mediterranean diet with a lot of seafood and all this great stuff, and you're not eating a bunch of sugar. You're doing a SAPIEN diet. It's
You figured out that pasta made you feel really, really bad, and that the alternative pasta that's not made out of bleached flour, right?
Yeah.
That's makes you feel better. Yeah, exactly. And by having a construct of how this works, I think it empowers a lot of people. And I really think that's our goal, is to empower people to eat the way they feel good and to not have to be married to one concept or another concept.
All right.
Let's
do it. So we've had such great success. I'll reiterate, at Evolve Healthcare, Dr. Gary's killing it. So many amazing stories. I mean,
I'll talk about them.
So many. We're going to talk to some of these patients. I love it when I hear the nurses, they're in the hospital and then they get on board and then someone else gets on board and they're all losing weight. It's amazing.
And they build a community and people lean on each other. And it's really, it's like overwhelming. I on a weekly basis, I have to step back and just feel grateful that I can offer such a meaningful intervention, frankly, because, you know, when it came to food and nutrition, when it came to diabetes and obesity, I watched, you know, my colleagues go into subspecialties like obesity, like endocrinology, and I saw them I'm sorry to say, just not really offer meaningful interventions, offer basically pharmaceuticals or the same old standard American diet nonsense that is just proven time and time again to be a failure. So I'm very, very proud of what we've put together. I'm very, very proud of Brian. This Peak Human podcast is something you guys should be listening to. I listen to it on a regular basis. You don't need to listen to them back to back to back to back. Pick ones that are exciting to you. I know we'll mention certain ones as we kind of go through things, but you know, I really encourage everyone to explore. I also, since we're kind of reaching our endpoint here, I want to share with everyone, you know, it's really not easy to source great food sometimes, depending on where you live. And Brian's got a great company called Nose to Tail. He works with farmers that practice regenerative agriculture. Their animals are well cared for. The food that the animals consume is high quality. Thus, the animal food that you consume is high quality. This is the crux of what we're talking about. So check out, is it?
Nosetotale.org, yeah.
We're making a movie.
Food Lies.
I'm very excited. It's a labor of love for Brian. I kind of stand by on the side and just root him on and his team. And it's really exciting. I also want to introduce Yaniv Fitucci. He's our third partner in SAPIEN. He's producing this podcast. He's producing the movie. He's an amazing guy, and hopefully we'll hear from him on our later in the season. What else?
Also the program, the SAPIEN program. So we've formalized this into a program. I mean, I'll have to throw some love to Dr. Gary over at Evolve as well. I mean, if you're in the LA area, definitely go there. We're changing people's lives, but you know, you could do online consults, but we've extended that to the SAPIEN program where anyone around the world can do it. And we have a 10-week program with videos and all the content and health coaching and everything to make it work, because it's not always easy. I mean, you can listen to the podcast and you could, you know, try to get some of the concepts, but it's not always easy to pull it off.
And oftentimes you need a community of people that understand what you're doing, because there's so much disinformation out there. So we also have a SAPIEN tribe. We do bi-weekly talks where me, Brian, our health coach Becker, and other members of the tribe jump on. We do a Skype type style call where we all talk about, you know, current issues and questions we have, and I make myself available through that channel. We have on that tribe, like a number of opportunities to talk to each other, basically, which that support is really, really important.
Yeah. You really need to build that community. You need to build the tribe. And we're going to have the tribe. I think we're going to have tribes around the world and actually do in-person stuff as well. But for now, it's online, sapien.org. You can find out about all this stuff.
Brian does meetups. Right now, it's kind of a tricky time, but
we're gonna do one in Austin.
We're gonna do more meetups, which is we get together, we eat some healthy meat, we talk about, get to know each other. Last thing I want to mention: this is a lifestyle. We will talk mostly about food. When I talk with people, when I counsel people personally, when me and Brian talk about this stuff with people, this includes healthy sun exposure. This includes healthy stress management strategies. This includes acute stressors like heat and cold immersion therapy, deep breathing, mindfulness and meditation, different workout strategies. I mean, you have to live the lifestyle. We're very proud to be. We are, one of the things that I think we both take pride in is living the lifestyle to show people. I don't think going to a doctor that's super unhealthy and tells you to eat this way or do that, and then they're like walk out the back and they're like not doing that.
Yeah.
I don't. So I hold myself accountable to live this lifestyle. I know Brian does, and I'm open about that because I think that's very important. You know, I want people to understand that I am all in I am all in. Like we have committed our lives to this. I've committed my practice. I've changed how I practice medicine. Brian's whole life circumnavigates the SAPIEN diet and lifestyle. And I really think that, I want people to know that we're available. Reach out to us through all the channels we just mentioned.
Absolutely. I can't add to that. Just so much more. It's a lifestyle, sleep, stress, all the things. Exercise, diet is number one. But let's wrap it for now, and we'll come back for another great episode next week.
We've got some great guests. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks, guys. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. Please share this episode with friends and family. Give us a review on iTunes, and check out everything else we're doing on sapien.org. And we'll see you next time.